Alright, good evening everybody. Sorry for making a nighttime video. I got out of work late because I got to work late. I got over one flu and I'm starting another one, but it's okay. It's all part of God's plan, I guess. I know that's what I gotta believe, right? So anyway, I wanted to talk today about Jeannette Pirro. I read an article where she called out, Congresswoman Omar Ilhan for wearing a hijab. And in that, Fox News, where she said that, condemned her for saying that, and one of the staff members of Fox News, who is a Muslim, was the one who voiced the condemnation, which Fox News shared. And I think rightfully so. I think that is, personally, even though, specifically because I'm a Republican, this type of a statement from Jeannette Pirro about Sharia law does not represent the true values of the Party of Lincoln, and also does not represent the true values of the Republican Party today, which is still the Party of Lincoln. But she said specifically, which was rather shocking and upsetting, although she didn't make it as a statement, she rather said that she made it more or less as a means to open dialogue. And so if it's a means to open dialogue, so I'm butting in here. Now, people who don't know might be watching this video for the first time. You can't see me. You can see some of my other videos. I'm a Jewish rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi. I dress funny, just like she does. My wife wears a headscarf also. As do many people, many women in my community, and many men in my community, wear beards and side locks and hats and so forth, long coats. Look a little different. And so the answer people are going to give, well, that's different. The Muslims are terrorists and the Jews aren't. That's not true. There's nothing, that's not all Muslims are terrorists. Not everyone who prays 5 times a day is a terrorist. Are you crazy? Yeah, there's a small minority of Muslims who are terrorists. America is a pretty moderate, or what I would call traditional, community of Muslims in America. Because what we call moderate Islam is still generally pretty religious. Generally, moderate Muslim will pray 5 times a day and keep halal, and perhaps even wear the hijab. Some do and some don't. We see, like in the Congress, the other Congresswoman Tlaib, she doesn't wear the hijab. But what Jeannette Pirro said, which was upsetting, is she said that is an indication that Omar Ilhan has a devotion to Sharia law that runs counter to the U.S. Constitution. And this is highly problematic. I would imagine her name Jeannette Pirro, her name sounds like an Italian name. I would imagine she's probably a Roman Catholic. And to say that a devotion to Sharia law runs contrary to the Constitution is like saying that a devotion to the Catholic canon law runs contrary to the Constitution, which it doesn't. Or, in my case, as a Jew, a devotion to the Jewish halacha, the Jewish law, runs contrary to the Constitution. Simply wearing a hijab, there's nothing wrong with that. I understand that it runs contrary to a long-standing tradition in the American legislature. However, they changed their rules. Joe Lieberman didn't push for it. It's a different world, and Joe Lieberman is, he's a pious, modern Orthodox Jew, but he's not ultra-Orthodox, and, some people, especially in his generation, it wasn't common to always wear a yarmulke, but then you see, I remember seeing him on TV, and he'd put on a hat when he's outside, like my Zayda did, My Zayda, always, when I would see him, except on Shabbos, he'd be wearing a baseball cap or a fedora. On Shabbos, he'd sit with a yarmulke on. Usually it was like a red yarmulke, something like that, with a button on top. And, Oliver Shalom. And, when he davened, with a talis on, talis and tefillin, then he didn't wear a hat. Mincha, he always wore a hat. Das ist gewähnt der Seite. And I asked my mother, I said, when he sat in the office, he was a parole officer, did he wear a yarmulke? No. Maybe he had one in his pocket for when he ate, or whatever it is. Me, I work as a rabbi, so it's funny if I don't wear a yarmulke, but I'll be honest, if I do a wedding for a non-Jewish couple, which I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of non-Jewish weddings, probably somewhere around 700 weddings in my lifetime, the past about 12 years or so, 11 and a half years, and probably less than 100 of those have been Jewish weddings, far less than 100, I would say. So I'm standing there for a few minutes. So if I don't cover my head, I'm not walking Daled Amos, I'll wear a hat until the ceremony. And if it's outside, sometimes they don't mind if I wear a top hat or something at the ceremony. As all is this. So, for a long time I did, but then I realized it was the halacha and my, and the Masorah and my family. My Zayda was an Ner L'Chiyid. And that's what, so, but again, if somebody did wear a yarmulke, I can imagine if Shmuley Bateach, I know he ran for Congress, he lost. If he won, Mistama, he would have pushed that they change the rule. The same that they made for Talib. I would say the bigger problem the same they made for Ilhan. And as I've said time and time again, the problem with Omar, Ilhan, and Talib is that they're Democrats. They're part of the party that rebelled against this country, rebelled against this union. And that's the problem. Not that they're Muslims. There are many very fine Muslims who pray 5 times a day and recite the Quran, and they're not terrorists and they're not extremists. But as far as even from the standpoint of Islam, just like it is in Judaism and Christianity, the points of view of the Democratic Party run contrary to the traditional religious views of the 3 great Abrahamic religions. So where's she coming from that she could be a Democrat? Either of them. They should be Republicans. The Republican Party is much more in line with Islam. But I wanted to talk another issue about this question of Sharia law. I think what we have to make a distinction about is religious, private practice of Sharia, and including public worship and so forth, and political Sharia, or violent Sharia. just like in the American laws, you can't, you can't hide behind the Jewish law to commit a crime. And there are rabbis who are in prison because they believed they were doing God's will, and we could debate that, especially when it came to the issues of the women, the agunas, and but if they do something like that, if they engage in something violent, they're going to understand that they're running the risk of going to prison. If they believe that's an act of Mesiras Nefesh, I don't know. I don't think it is. I don't think it's proper. But I certainly think it's wrong. And this is the same thing. If in Muslim communities, if there are honor killings or people chopping off limbs or something like that, it's illegal. That's just how it is. You can't do it. And if you want to try to, another major difference between a lot of Muslims and almost any Jew that I could imagine is that Muslims like to impose, many Muslims believe they should impose their laws upon the general public. For the most part, the Muslims who have come to America don't want to do that. But, they were very happy, for example, when the federal prison stopped serving pork products. Although they pointed out that's not a replacement for kosher or halal. Simply not serving pork. Whereas in the Jewish community, we don't care. As long as you don't make us eat pork, we don't care if somebody else eats pork. It's not a sin to us if somebody else eats pork. But the thing, with that being said, it seems incongruous to me that so many Muslims have those types of feelings, and they say they're offended when they see pork products or something like that, and yet they don't care and yet they can vote for the Democratic Party that has as their basic sacraments things that are in the Muslim religion haram. They're forbidden, just like they're forbidden in the Christian religion, and they're asur, they're forbidden in the Jewish religion. Whether it's abortion on demand or it's redefinition of marriage, these things run in contradiction of the basics of traditional Abrahamic faiths. And yet it's still I don't understand. I mean, I understand the Jewish world. Most of these that they run as Democrats, they're not Orthodox. They're not real Jews. But they're apostates or heretics or atheists, which are both apostates and heretics, just because they happen to be born Jewish. This whole idea of being born Jewish for someone who doesn't even believe in Judaism, it's nonsense. You don't practice, you don't believe in anything, you don't even believe in God, and you're going to go and talk, I'm Jewish. It's one thing for me as a religious person to say that, but for the non-religious Jew to say they're Jew, and the thing is, and I'll still perform a funeral for a non-religious Jew and give them a Jewish funeral. I don't have a problem with that, because by my definition, they're Jewish. The fact of the matter is, there's nothing wrong with giving a Jewish funeral to a non-Jew either. And the thing is, I won't perform an intermarriage between someone who is Jewish by Jewish law, even if they're not religious, with someone who's not Jewish. That's just that's my standard. But that's me as a religious person. But I don't see any reason. I never try to convince someone not to marry, because better off To me, it's in a certain sense, it's better off a lot of these people intermarry and they stop being Jews and stop polluting our people. Go convert to another religion. You'll be better than being a secular Jew who makes a Chilul Hashem. Much better Christian who believes in God and believes in the Bible than one of these commies who have a Jewish last name, who just make us all look bad. Make a Chilul Hashem, they desecrate the name of the Lord. So if they would go shmad, it's none of my business. Let them go convert to Christianity. They'll be a better American than they would as a communist, left wing, secular Jew. What do we need them for? I know a lot of people, and the thing is, if you're going to be frum, I believe in Kiruv, but I don't have to bend over backwards to try to accommodate. And the fact of the matter is, though, a lot of the things that we have in the Orthodox world are above and beyond the letter of the law. But the thing is that the level of hatred, the level of the intolerance that the quote-unquote Jewish left has against Orthodox Judaism is frightening. I'm reminded of the story, they say it was Rabbi Abraham J. Twersky, Shlita. He was once on a bus or a train or something. A lady goes up to him and says, you Hasidim, you Orthodox Jews, you make us all look bad. You're so backwards and you're so horrible. It really upsets me. It really rubs me the wrong way. And he said, I'm sorry, man, but I'm Amish. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. You have such a beautiful culture. I have a lot of respect for you people. He's like, oh, you oisfarf. I meant I'm Hamish. So, but Abrazoy is this. The level of hatred that secular Jews have for Orthodox Jews. Not all. There are a lot of good secular Jews who are not really secular usually. And even if, and they have a Pintalid. And I'm not saying everybody has to keep everything. You keep what you can. You try your best, but you believe. One good friend of mine, he said, he couldn't stand being in the Reform temple anymore because the Reform rabbi was saying, I don't know if we really believe in all this stuff. I said, this is a rabbi? Now, Baruch Hashem, he goes to an Orthodox shul. That's a big thing. I wouldn't call such a person secular. He said he might self-identify as Reform, but really, I speak of orthodoxy and orthopraxy. Even if someone's not orthoprax, it could be Orthodox. And it's very, very, we have 13 principles of faith. If someone believes in that, they're Orthodox. Even if they're not orthoprax. And there are plenty of people who are orthoprax who aren't so Orthodox either. You really need to have both, but when it comes to practice, God has mercy. When it comes to belief, what does it hurt to believe? What do you lose by believing in the 13 principles of faith? You feel guilty that you don't do, so you try a little better next time. That's the story one of my friends said, the difference between an Ashkenazic Jew and a Sephardic Jew. The Sephardic Jew, he's not so religious, but he feels bad about it. And he goes to his Chacham, and he'll say, before Yom Kippur, I'm going to try better next year. But the Ashkenazic Jew said, the Reform rabbi says it's okay. But Baruch Hashem, we can have by the Ashkenazim also a Sephardic Musik, But to understand this type of ideology that Jeannette Pirro was talking about, this to be worried about the threat of Sharia law, is actually a threat to all religious people. I would go and say if Congress did not resolve that you could wear head coverings in the House or in the Senate or wherever, Ms. Omar would be wrong if she did, but they changed the rules, and I'm very supportive that they changed the rules. I think it's a beautiful thing. It doesn't change my opinion of Ms. Omar. I think she's a horrible person, and I actually do believe she's an anti-Semite only because of the face that she made for that guy. What's his name? Abrams. Like the hateful face. I don't think she's anti-Semitic if she just for disagreeing with Israel. I was listening to a recording from the 70s from Rabbi Victor Miller, and he said someone asked him. He pronounced it Spiro Agnew. I always heard Spiro Agnew. I'm not going to correct him. I'm just going to say I heard different girsos. But Rav Miller, he said, I have to say Blushing Rabbi, right? He said, someone asked him a question. You can find this on YouTube. Why do you say that Spiro Agnew was a good, decent, righteous man? If we found out he was a shtickle and anti-Semite. And Rabbi Miller answered, he said, what are you talking about? He said, first of all, he said, opposition to Israel doesn't make you an anti-Semite. But Agnew was a decent, good man. Doesn't mean he was one of the Lamed Vav Tzaddikim. He was one of the 36 saints that the world stands because of them. But he stood for family values and decency and morality. And he said the same thing is true about Richard Nixon. And the thing was the Democrats were looking for just some excuse. LBJ did much worse things than Nixon, but because the Democrats are in the media and everything, they were looking for some excuse about Nixon. Rav Miller said that time and time again. That if everybody was judged fairly and equally, the same thing we see today. Hillary Clinton gets away with actually colluding with Russia to try to influence the election. She actually did it. There's very clear evidence that she did it. And yet there's a probe into Donald Trump. There's no fairness. Horrifying. And so he said you can't expect all the Gentiles to love all the Jews. But that's not what's so important. What's important is the values that our Torah has. And that goes back to what I was saying. Somebody opposed Israel, the same thing. You look at Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was a horrible president. He is a good Christian man. And as much as people try to brand him as an anti-Semite, I do not believe he's an anti-Semite. Jimmy Carter. It happened. There's pictures of it. A delegation of Hasidic Rebbes and other Rabbonim went to see Jimmy Carter to discuss some graves in Poland that were being destroyed. And they were given, I think, 3 minutes to see him. And he spent 15 minutes with them. And he told them, he said, how... in Georgia, what did he run into? Reform rabbis, He said, how nice it is to finally meet some real rabbis. And for weeks and weeks after, all he could talk about was how impressed he was meeting the Hasidic grand rabbis. The Bobova Rebbe and his son who later succeeded him, the Satmar Rebbe, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe, all Zechronim Levracha. They were all there. By Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy Carter had a lot of respect for them. I remember Rabbi Weinberger saying something that, even the most anti-Semitic people in Poland, they loved the tzaddikim. They all had respect for our Jewish saints. and he said he remembers going to visit graves of our saints, their tombs there in Eastern Europe, and he would see Christian women go there and cross themselves as they're praying at the graves of our saints, because they knew that their prayers would be answered. And same story, Shidlovtzer Rebbe, he should be well. He's making chasana for an anikel now. I can't believe this week his grandson getting married to a daughter of the Pittsburgher Rebbe. I say it's Nor Sameach Shidduch because I had a few friends in Nor Sameach who were Hasidim of the Pittsburgher, and one friend in Nor Sameach was a Chassid of the Shidlovtzer. Special thing. So anyway, and he went to the chasana actually. So Shidlovtzer Rebbe, he rebuilt the Ohel, the mausoleum over the tomb of his wife's great grandfather, who was the Rebbe of Shidlovtzer. That was lost in the war, and it was a place. He was a big Rebbe, many Hasidim, and he had, until World War II, every year on his yahrzeit was in Cheshvan. Thousands and thousands of people would come to make the pilgrimage to his tomb. And it was lost in the war, it was bombed, and then the communists paved over half of the cemetery. Baruch Hashem, that part wasn't paved over. And a nace happened. Shidlovtzer Rebbe was able to find the Yisoidus and the Mitzevis from the Tzaddikim from Shidlovtzer. And he had a donor. He built the mausoleum. I was there once with an anikel from the Shidlovtzer, from the old Shidlovtzer, with the Biala Rebbe from Borough Park, Ben Achar Ben from Nosson David from Shidlovtzer. And the Rebbe said that when he was there, he said a woman came to him and they started building, and she said finally the Jews came back. You don't know how many letters I wrote to Warsaw. A Christian woman, probably Mastoma, a Catholic woman. We all knew since I'm a little girl that you come here and pray and your prayers are answered. I mean, there's a lot of similarity with the traditional Christians, the Catholics and the Orthodox, and the Hasidic tradition. Many similarities, and I would venture to say that that's because we come from the same biblical roots, not because one is copying the other or anything. That being said, he also found anti-Semitic graffiti in the same place a few days later, written in Polish, whatever it is. So that's the world we live in. But that being said, being an anti-Semite is not the worst thing in the world. The worst thing in the world is failing to uphold the biblical values. I don't care what religion you are. Especially if you're from if you're from an Abrahamic religion, you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, you're a Jew, and you oppose the Abrahamic values. Even if you mess up yourself, and you don't do everything perfectly yourself, but you know the difference between right and wrong, you don't try to change it, and you don't try to justify. You admit when you're a sinner, which is, central to all three of those faiths, is repentance and seeking God's grace. That's what we got to be dealing with, not caring. But Rabbi Miller said, you see what the secular Jews made it. They don't care for a Jew. They don't care about Shabbos. They don't care about kosher. They don't care about the mikveh. They don't care about the holidays. They haven't put on tefillin since they left Europe. But Israel is so important. It's not. I mean, there are plenty. Most of the mitzvahs of the Torah are in the Holy Land. But if you're going to go to the Holy Land and not keep the mitzvahs there, There's special mitzvahs that can only be done in the Holy Land. It's but you're gonna go there and you're gonna desecrate the Holy Land. What do you need to go there for? It's bad enough you're doing sins outside of the Holy Land. It's much worse to do them in the Holy Land. That's why Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed. Other countries, it's one thing. They did the same things in Egypt, but Egypt didn't get utterly destroyed the way they got destroyed, but not utterly destroyed the way Sodom and Gomorrah did. Because the Holy Land can't take that kind of thing. It's going to spit them out. That's what Leviticus says. The land will spit you out. Why? It's a delicate holy land. Why do you want to desecrate it? These are important things to consider. But putting that aside, there are basic. We have what we call the 7 laws of Noah. Basic morality, basic ethics. Everybody has to keep. Not to murder, not to steal, not to commit adultery and other immoral sexual acts, and so forth. And again, even if someone commits, let's say, immoral sexual acts, but they don't try to justify it, they go before God and they say, Almighty God, please forgive me. I'll try to be better. Please help me to overcome it next time. And maybe they'll overcome it next time. But not to say it's okay. You can't do whatever you want. It's not a free-for-all. And I say like this, when it gets to the level of marriage, it's one thing. All right, somebody wants to do a sin. They have a desire, they have a lust to do a sin, and it's wrong, and it's a major sin, even a capital sin, perhaps. Depends on what they do. But it's one thing to say, I'm a sinner, I'm going to try to be better next time. It's another thing to make a bracha over it, to say some prayers, to have a minister or a rabbi say some prayers over such a thing. That's heresy. That's much worse. In Judaism, we're not allowed to eat pork, right? Compare it like this. There's somebody, they say, I love to eat pork, but I know it's a sin. I can't help myself. Every year on Yom Kippur, I fast and I klap al chet. And next time I'll try to be better. I can't help myself. They're a regular sinner, just like everybody sins on some level. And so they're not a heretic. They're still a Jew. Just they're doing something wrong. But if someone says, I don't like pork, but it's ridiculous. That's old-fashioned. That's superstitious to say that is against God's law to eat pork, for a Jew to eat pork. That's heresy. So that person who's not eating pork but believes it's okay to eat pork is worse than the one who actually eats the pork, and it's the same thing. Whatever it is, homosexuality, whatever it is, there could be a person who engages in this, but they know it's wrong, and they don't try to justify it. They say, oh, it's a sin. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to boss around other people, But it is what it is. But to be supportive, that's the issue. Meaning, even if the whole world wants to vote for this, I mean, it's very upsetting to me that there were Orthodox Jews in the New York Assembly who voted to change the definition of marriage. David Weprin, who I met once, he said, well, it's I didn't talk to him about this. I was even mechabed him a little bit. I let him lead benching or whatever. He said, well, I'm not running for Rosh Hashiva. I think because he was running for Congress, actually. That's not an answer. The Pastor Diaz, he wasn't ashamed. He was a Democrat. Even so, they'll have enough votes without you. You don't need to. The same thing, Shelley Silver. That's why he's in jail. You think Shelley Silver's in jail because of his corruption? That's his real corruption, was that he supported this. It's one thing what people do, but to make a bracha over it, to be koisvik suvas, to sign a marriage license between two men, it's a serious thing. It's a straw that breaks the camel's back on certain things. Maybe not for two women if they're not Jewish. Maybe there's a different that you could discuss. Yes, no, maybe. But between two men, to even they do the sin. So, but at least they feel bad about it. They know that they're living in sin. Just like the same thing, there are people who are living together, a man and a woman, and they always say, "Oh, well, I'm living in sin." So at least they feel a little, even though by Jewish law, if a couple's living together, non-Jewish couple for sure, if they're living together, they're married according to Jewish law. And if the wife cheats on him, she's pretty much committing adultery according to the Jewish law. The Jewish law recognizes for sure for non-Jews the common law marriage, according to Maimonides. For Jews, you need to have witnesses, that people are married, but it's a complicated issue. So whatever it is, but that being said, if someone has a devotion to religious laws, that's not a problem with the American Constitution. Just after the American Constitution protects the right of Ilhan Omar to wear hijab. The issue is the other things, which I don't think she's really that. I don't think she's really that Muslim. I mean, if she's with the Democrats, she's not a real Muslim. I mean, how? I mean, to me, the whole hijab that she's wearing is a joke. It's so. All right. Well, thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. And we'll see you later. All right.